Hi, everyone, and welcome to Deadline's virtual Sundance studio. Today, we're talking about Son of Monarchs with writer-director Alexis Gambis and star Tenoch Huerta Mejia. Welcome, guys, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a really terrific film, but before we get to it, I wanted to ask you, Alexis, I mean, you have such an interesting background. You're both a filmmaker and a biologist, and you found an interesting way to incorporate science into your storytelling. Can you talk a little bit about the through lines in the films you've made to date and sort of how that connects to Son of Monarchs?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always been interested in the role of the scientist on screen and kind of depicting scientists, because we're just, I feel like scientists are artists to some extent, and there's some sense of just capturing the scientists at work and their creative process that we don't often see on screen. I mean, we oftentimes see biopics and science fiction, but just kind of the kind of the poetry and the like the musicality of being a scientist, and the creative process in that is something that I'm really interested in. And also the idea of studying life in a laboratory, kind of distilled from, you're in New York City, but you're also kind of in this like little bubble, studying life and studying butterflies. For me, is just like a fascinating world. And so, a lot of my work, I started out as a biologist, and to some extent, the film and Son of Monarchs is a little bit biographical to some extent, because I was coming from France actually, and studying in a laboratory, and I was trying to understand who I was, but at the same time studying life under the microscope. And so that's a little bit, how I got into film. I started getting obsessed also with filming through microscopes, filming animals, making analogies between humans and animals. And then and when I was working on Son of Monarchs, I remember meeting Tenoch and talking about science, and talking about having more kind of different types of people playing scientists on screen. And, the rest is what happened. Tenoch kind of jumped on this crazy ride with me. So
can you tell me a little bit more, Alexi, about sort of the themes you were meditating on with this film, and arriving at this story of Mendel, because it's fascinating how you bring together an exploration of, I guess, biology, of climate change, of cultural identity, of migration, all these things you sort of interweave.
Yeah, maybe there's too many topics. But one of the ideas that first of all, I think that an animal is a good way of grouping a lot of topics together, because an animal can represent politics. The monarch butterfly represents migration. It's been used as kind of a symbol for migrant rights because of the fact that monarch butterflies migrate from Canada through the US and arrive in Mexico. But it's also an animal that we study in labs. It's also related to the day of, to the souls of the dead in Mexico. So it encompassed all of these ideas. But one of the big themes that I was trying to work on with Tenoch was this idea of identity. To one extent, he studies identity in a laboratory, and to another extent, he's also trying to understand his own identity. And so I think that that was kind of an interesting combination to both. And Tenoch and I were talking a little bit about this, but also this idea of migration back to Mexico that we don't often see in films, right? That he's living in the US, he's a Mexican scientist, and he returns to Mexico, and countering some of the narratives that we see in film, and also showing that, there are many immigrant scientists and immigrant artists that we don't often see on screen. And I wanted to capture that. And so that's some of the things that we discussed with Tenoch as part of this film.
Yeah, so Tenoch, tell me a little bit about, I guess, what attracted you to this film and to the role you play.
Yeah, obviously it's because I love science since I was a child. So I studied journalism at university. Plans were become how do you call divulgador de la ciencia, Alexis?
Like a science communicator.
Yeah, that was one of my. One hand is this emotion about science, but in the other hand, it's how this portrait of the me creation that Alexis did in the script, because yes, of course, this is a different kind of migration. It's it's not usual in movies. In the real life, is really usual. You know, most of the people who migrate from Mexico to other part of the world is to United States. So most of the people, there is a huge quantity of people moving to United States on airplane, which is my case. You know, I'm really I have this enormous privilege to move to United States with a working visa and flying, not walking through the desert. So this privilege, it's another kind of me creation, and Alexis make this portrait, and for many reasons for me was interesting. So even the social and the cultural interest on this movie, because it's at the same time it's wonderful, a beautiful portrait of Mexico. You know, our tradition of the dead, the Day of the Dead, which is really important in our culture. It's in this movie, and actually, it's the heart of this movie. This all the stories gravitating around this festivity, around this feeling, and this enormous cultural link between Mexicans and dead. So it was important. Actually, I actually said that in two different interviews. Maybe after this pandemic ended up, we need to create an enormous altar all around the world to celebrate our dead, to remember them, and and to celebrate that we are alive. So this idea of the Day of the Dead, the altars, and how you have a strong relationship with the people who pass away, it's important. And so for me, it was an opportunity that I couldn't. Uh, I mean, I have to be there.
Mhm. Um, well, I guess I would ask, like, what were the biggest challenges for you both in making this film? For you, Tenoch, in inhabiting maybe the trauma of this character and at an early age, and the emotional transformation he goes through, and for you, Alexi, maybe in bringing the film to life visually, it seemed like there were a lot of different interesting hurdles.
Yeah, totally. It's as an actor, it's a challenge to try to find exactly the place where this character is, because he's totally depressed, and but it's alive at the same time, and it's you know, his head is in the cloud. To find exactly the place where this character is living, it was tricky, you know. But I I mean, I'm a I love the hot weather. So to be in the cold of the New York, it affects me in a way, and I just live this emotion and this cold get inside of me, and it works a lot. So maybe the half of the job was the cold weather and not exactly me. But yeah, going to that emotional places was really fantastic. But when you have a director like Alexis, he's really sensitive and he's listening to you all the time, so it works a lot, because and he introduced me with some colleagues, so it was easier to watch these people, because as Alexis said before, artists and scientifics, I think we are really close, you know, because we are trying to make real worlds that doesn't exist. Is just, you create metaphors, and the art takes something, join with something else, and create a third world, a third different another thing with these elements. So it happens with science. They create words that doesn't exist before. They is just idea, and they take those ideas and make something beautiful, and that's science, that's art, and I think it's the perfect match.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think in my case, one of the tricky parts was to try to find the right balance, right? To try to find the right balance between the science, the spirituality. You know, it's almost like I was kind of creating a recipe, and I wanted to make sure that everything kind of had a homogeneous kind of mixture to it. And I was worried, you know, to have like it was a bit tricky to find that balance between all of these things. It's also a very, where we were talking, me and Tenoch, about this, it's a film about internal conflict. And so that's always hard on screen because he's going through things that are happening inside him. And in a way, the science is interesting because when he looks through the microscope, he's looking at himself, right? So there were ways in which I could kind of use dreams and the images of the microscope. Another aspect that was challenging was, you know, I'm French Venezuelan and I arrive in Mexico, you know, Day of the Dead, Michoacan. I definitely don't want to over romanticize, or I don't want to portray, you know, I was always worried about, oh my God, here comes a Frenchman to Mexico making a film. And so, you know, I spent 2 years doing documentary work and spending time with the locals to really understand these places, and also the issue of the mines, you know, versus the forest, and people need to work. And so that's where the two brothers comes in, is that you know, both of the brothers have their own opinions and nobody is right or wrong in this situation. So I think that was difficult in terms of trying to incorporate myself into that Mexican culture and finding that balance as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have so many more questions I could ask you, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Alexis and Tenoch, for being here. And please, everyone, check out Son of Monarchs today at Sundance, premiering at 3 p.m. Thank you both very much.